On a frigid night in Finland, 4 teenagers set up camp near the shore of a lake. They're buzzing with excitement for the camping trip ahead as they settle in for the night, and there's plenty of conversation to go around. Spirits are high, and in the moment, it feels there could be nothing more perfect than spending time outdoors under the bright stars of the northern sky. However, by morning, 3 of the teenagers are found dead alongside 1 gravely injured survivor in a shocking event that remains to be one of the country's most heinous and puzzling cases. This is the mystery of the Lake Bodom murders. The events of this case took place outside Espoo, which is located on the southern coast of Finland. The city is known for its varied geography, which includes numerous lakes, such as the fateful Lake Bodom, as well as forests and parks. Much of the city's land area is covered in forests, making it a popular destination for outdoor activities such as hiking and skiing. The city is also home to several nature reserves, including Nussio National Park, which is a popular destination for both locals and tourists. The 4 teenagers that have been camping at the lake were named Marley Imreli Bjorklund and Anya Tulikki-Markki, who are both 15 years old. Then there were Seppo Antero Boisman and Nils Wilhelm Gustafsson, who were 18 and the boyfriends of the other 2 teens. On Sunday, June 5th, 1960, between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m, an unidentified assailant fatally stabbed and bashed Markki, Bjorklund and Boisman to death. Gustafsson, the only survivor of the slaughter, was injured, yet he managed to survive despite having concussion, fractures in his jaw and face, and facial bruising. He later said that he caught a glimpse of an attacker approaching them dressed in bright red and black. A group of young men who were birdwatching from a distance at around 6 a.m. saw the tent fall and a blonde man leaving the area. Following this, a carpenter called Esko Oiva Johansson found the victims' bodies at around 11 a.m. later that morning, who later alerted the police. When investigators arrived around noon, it was soon evident that the attack did not begin within the tent. Rather, the murderer had assaulted them from outside, slashing with a knife and using a blunt object. The weapons used in the murder have never been found. The keys of the victims' motorcycles, which they had left behind, were among the strange objects the killer had grabbed, according to detectives. Strangest of the evidence located was some 500 metres from the murder scene, Gustafsson's shoes that were found half buried. A major reason why the investigation was flawed was the 1960s police work done at the time. Not to put full blame on the era the crime took place, however, as there was also sheer incompetence from the detectives. The police had allowed a mob of not just officers but members of the public to trample over and disturb evidence relatively immediately and failed to cordon off the location or document the specifics of the incident. This was subsequently realised to be a serious mistake. Calling in soldiers to help with the search for the missing objects around the lake, many of which were never found, only served to make the error worse. Gustafsson's girlfriend Bjorklund was discovered on top of the tent, naked from the waist down, with the most wounds of any of the victims. She died from many stabs and lacerations, but the other 2 teenagers were killed less brutally. Gustafsson, the only survivor of the ordeal, was also discovered on the tent's top, lying down and gravely injured. Despite some trouble with the police work, a few significant suspects have surfaced during the Lake Bodom investigation. Carl Valdemar Gillström, an Oita kiosk owner who had a reputation for being nasty towards campers, was suspected by many locals. The police could not establish a direct connection between him and the murders. They thought he was odd, so they weren't very sure about the confessions he was reported to have made. In 1969, he died in Lake Bodom, most likely by suicide. Many in town were aware of Gillström's aggressive tendencies. He tore down tents and threw rocks at those who came to his street. Several have since said they spotted Gillström returning from the crime site but were too terrified to approach him. Although it is too late and the police never tested Gillström's DNA, a book published in 2006 goes into great length on this theory. The book also asserts that, among other reasons, Linguistic limitations caused the police to almost immediately disregard even more evidence that was previously unknown to the general public. Hans Assmann, who lived a few kilometres from the edge of Lake Bodom, was the subject of the majority of public suspicion. Several well-read works promoted the idea that Assmann was responsible for the Bodom killings and the other homicides. Given that Assmann had an alibi for the night of the Bodom killings, the police did not take it seriously. Yet he had arrived at a hospital in Helsinki early on June 6, 1960, wearing bloody garments. Not only this, it has been reported that his wife had retracted the alibi statement and that those around Hans had heard him speak about throwing a knife down a well. Lastly, he had soon written his will not long after the murders were committed. Many point fingers at Hans due to his connection to another case, the murder of Kyllikki Saari. Kyllikki was a 17-year-old Finnish girl who was brutally murdered in Isojoki, Finland in 1953. She'd gone out for a bike ride on May 17th and never returned home. Her bike was found in the woods the next day and her body was discovered a week later. She'd been assaulted and strangled. Hans Assmann's wife claimed that her husband and his driver were close to Isojoki at the time of the murder. Moreover, Assmann was the owner of a light brown Opel, the same model that multiple witnesses had spotted close to the crime scene. When Assmann arrived home the evening of the murder, his shoes were damp and one of his socks were gone, according to Assmann's wife. The car also had dents in it. The two men supposedly went again a few days later, but this time they brought a shovel. Eventually, detectives came to the conclusion that Saari's killer had to be left-handed, which Assmann was. According to reports, Assmann admitted his involvement in the crime to Matti Palaro, a former police officer, in 1997 and took ownership of Saari's killing. After his car, driven by his chauffeur, collided with Saari, Assmann claimed that the death was a result of an auto accident. To hide the evidence of the driver's involvement, the two men staged the case as a murder. Palaro claims that Assmann said, on his deathbed, "One thing, however, I can tell you right away, because it is the oldest one, and in a way, it was an accident that had to be covered up. Otherwise, our trip would have been revealed. Even though my friend was a good driver, the accident was unavoidable. I assume you know what I mean." However, most miraculously, almost 44 years after this atrocity at the lake was committed, a different suspect altogether was finally arrested in the case. Unbelievably, the authorities have brought back in a then 62-year-old Gustafsson, the sole survivor of the original attack, as their prime suspect. The prosecution painted a picture of the whole atrocity being committed by someone within the group of teenagers. Based on a further forensic examination, the Finnish National Directorate of Investigation pronounced the investigation to be closed in the early months of 2005. The statement claims that Gustafsson was intoxicated and barred from the tent when he attacked the other boy, breaking his jaw in a struggle that led him to killing 3 people. Gustafsson's defence attorney contended that one or more of the outsiders were responsible for the killings, and that given the severity of his wounds, Gustafsson was unable to commit 3 murders. It was well known that Gustafsson, who was discovered barefoot, was the owner of the shoes that he had seemingly deliberately abandoned 500 yards away. Breakthrough DNA analysis was crucial for the prosecution, since it revealed that whilst Gustafsson's blood was completely missing from the shoes, that of the 3 slain victims was present. The prosecution made an effort to strengthen their case by claiming that Gustafsson had made an incriminating statement whilst in jail, and the 2 birdwatchers had identified him as the perpetrator that they saw at the crime scene. Eventually, on October 7, 2005, almost half a century later, all accusations against Gustafsson were dropped. He received €44,900 from the state of Finland for the mental anguish brought on by the lengthy remand period, but he was denied the right to sue Finnish publications for slander. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the Lake Bodom murders have continued to fascinate the public, and the case has been subject of numerous investigations and documentaries over the years. In 2004, a Finnish film director named Markku Flink made a documentary about the case, which included interviews with surviving witnesses and relatives of the victims. In 2011, a group of amateur investigators launched a crowdfunding campaign to finance a new investigation into the case. The group hoped to use modern forensic techniques and new technology to uncover new evidence and potentially solve the case. However, the campaign was ultimately unsuccessful in raising enough funds, and the investigation did not go ahead. Despite the lack of a definitive resolution, the case remains one of the most notorious in Finnish criminal history and has become a cultural touchstone in the country. The case has been referred to in Finnish literature, music, and film, and has become an enduring part of Finnish popular culture. The Lake Bodom murders have also been the subject of controversy and debate. Some have criticised the police for their mishandling of the investigation, whilst others have questioned the reliability of witness statements and the credibility of suspects who have been named over the years. The case has also raised questions about the role of the media in shaping public perceptions of criminal cases. The sensationalist coverage of the murders by the Finnish press in the 1960s has been criticised for creating a climate of hysteria and speculation that may have hindered the investigation. The case has also had a profound impact on the families of the victims. The surviving family members have had to grapple with the trauma and loss of their loved ones, and the ongoing speculation and interest in the case have made it difficult for them to find closure. In recent years, there have been renewed efforts to solve the case. In 2019, the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation announced they were reopening the investigation, citing advances in both forensic technology and the availability of new evidence. However, as of 2023, no new developments in the case have been reported. The Lake Bodom murders continue to be a subject of fascination and debate for true crime enthusiasts and the general public alike. Despite the passage of time, the Lake Bodom murders continue to be a haunting reminder of the enduring mysteries of the human experience.